To all the persons whom I cannot see,
Come on down!
and join me behind the streams. Descend that staircase in all your nude glory. I shall wait for you here.
Right here waiting for you.
So glad you came back. Or maybe this is your first time. If it is, welcome. If you're new, this is the drill. We take a little amble through the fields of Janine McRae's brain. That's me. I'm Janine McRae. And, amble through the meadows and look at the bracken, admire the rocks and grasses and birdies that all live up in here, in this rat's nest of a mind. Sorry, bird's nest. Bird's nest. It's a good walk. Just, grab a coffee, something that'll keep you hydrated perhaps, while we dive on into this one. This one might be long. I'm a little worried because I rambled a bit when I recorded the audio, so rambled in the bramble. Let's go. Today we're going to talk about the post. What do you look like when you're nude? Ooh la la. Or nude. Oh, matron. Depending on how you say it. And immediately we're into it. The title itself is, of course, a lyric from an early version of the Radiohead song Nude, off the album In Rainbows. As many of you will know, I am a huge fan. Sorry, I probably startled you there. I didn't mean to do that. That early version of Nude is from this, which was included in the OK Not OK box set on the 20th anniversary of OK Computer. This is called OK Not OK. It included some very different lyrics because obviously it's an early recording of the song. There's some strangled lyrics. What do you look like when you're nude? It's just a curious fellow. And here's a snippety-doodah. Like I said, he's just a curious fellow. It really does help set the tone for the post itself, which was about revealing yourself, being nude in your work, not about being actually in the nude with your clothes ripped off. Ooh, be that in a frenzied way or just, relaxed, you're about to have a shower. And by nude, I mean vulnerable, revealing what courage should be, authenticity. Who knows? Let's dig into it. Because I don't just mean metaphorical nudity in the things that you make. Not actual nudity, though. Oh, no. You do you. It's art.
You know it's art.
It's art. Because anything you make should feel risky and exposed, like, you're showing a little too much, maybe. But I mean also as an artist, however you express that, to be a little exposed and vulnerable as a person, I guess. Now, you can show as little or as much as you like. It's up to you to figure out how nude you're going to be. Scandalous. But I'm getting ahead of myself. See this? This has been on my corkboard, my creative vision board. It's not a vision board, it's just a board where I put things I might write about one day. It's been there since February 2022. I read a newsletter by Maria Brito back then. The newsletter's called The Groove. She was posting excerpts from her book, How Creativity Rules the World, the art and business of turning your ideas into gold. And this particular excerpt was called Why There's Always a Win in Failure. That sounds intriguing, does it not? Let me read a little excerpt from the intro. Doing something new and creating something of value requires experimentation. I already like where this is going. If you want to do something unique, you must be at peace with the idea that you don't know the outcome and you may fail. This person is speaking my language. And in that newsletter, that's how we get to the topic of Marcel Duchamp and his nude descending a staircase number 2. Backstory. In 1912, Monsieur Duchamp submitted this painting, Nude Descending a Staircase number 2, to the Salon des Indépendants. This was the show that if you wanted Parisians to be talking about your work and getting your name out there, you had to be in this show. The painting, as you will notice, features this sort of like half futurist, half cubist version of a nude descending a staircase, if you look real hard. It did not look like any other of the nudes painted at the time. And that, to the committee of this Salon des Indépendants, was a problem.
We've got a problem.
Because up until this point, nudes were traditionally very still. They didn't move a whole lot in a painting. Oh my. Kind of voyeuristic, I guess, in a way. People liked being able to see the bits, maybe. It's art.
You aren't supposed to feel it, it's art.
It's art, people. But it didn't end with how they didn't like how it looked and how it seemed to suggest movement. They also didn't like the title. Too literary, they said. Now, Duchamp, being a man of principles, was like, F you. I'm not going to change the title, you squares. And I withdraw my submission. I'm adding some anger that maybe he didn't have. I don't know. I wasn't there. A year later, it ended up in New York at the Armory Show, which is like similar kind of thing. You want to get your work in the Armory Show so people will be talking about it. There'll be buzz. You want it to be buzzworthy.
I see you look at this piece.
People hated it. The New York Times described it as, and I love this, an explosion in a shingle factory. So good. Now, I don't know if that was part of a critic's review or just a headline. It's just so good. If I was the writer that came up with that, I would have been so proud. I would have poured myself a drink. You did good work today, Janine. That is a wicked burn. Tangent. Critics. In my budding writing life, back when I worked at the Canberra Times, where I also worked in the research library, which you can hear me and watch me talk about in the episode Periodically Yours, I think it is. Anyway, I used to occasionally get to fill in for the TV writer, writing TV reviews and movie reviews. I was sort of, in my early 20s and trying to figure out what sort of writer I was. And I would, for some reason, look at these reviews as an opportunity not to actually, give some sort of review that maybe would help people decide if they wanted to see the movie or not. I would use it as an opportunity to show people how funny I could be, which I think is what you do when you're young. Anyway, point is this. If you're making the whole thing about you and showing off, you're flexing or whatever, then that's not good. That's all I'm going to say about it. I mean, art is such a hot button topic. Whether nudes should move or stay still, you would think you would at least be able to see or notice that it is a nude.
Are you naked?
Right? But this was cubism. It's all shingles. Explosion in a shingle factory is actually pretty accurate. Apparently, Duchamp was actually quite tickled. Artists, they're a weird mob. Okay, that's enough setup. So you have an actual nude that doesn't look like the expectation of what everybody at the time thinks a nude should look like. Well, hello. You have Duchamp, who is letting it all hang out, defying expectations, going against the status quo of the buttoned-up art world and saying nudes have movement. He's exposing himself to all sorts of criticisms by just putting it out there because he believes in his painting, and his take on this is completely different for the time. He is completely nude in that moment. With a pipe, probably.
The one the newspaper man called an explosion in a shingle factory.
Yes. That was a great line he put.
Anyway, I built a whole post around this idea of being nude, about being vulnerable, about being exposed in your work, and how much you want to reveal and how much you want to hold back, working out what that line is, to be completely naked in front of your peers, which sounds like a nightmare. I mean, it's a risk. You gotta be bold. You gotta be brave. Maybe it won't happen the first thing you do, but maybe you spend your life ratcheting up to this is who I am. Look at me, metaphorically naked, or maybe actually naked. You do you. Like I said, you do you. You gotta stand at the top of the stairs, naked, and then take that first step down, in this case, to another level. Duchamp did it. I mean, he was inspired, and you will see this as soon as I say it, he was inspired by time-lapse photography. Oh. For that, how the movement looks. Oh yeah, that's cool. He bucked against the nude reclining trend. He's a trendsetter. He did a lot of weird stuff, actually. The whole found objects thing, the bicycle wheel. I feel like I haven't really dug into his work enough. I don't know enough about it. One of the first things I saw when I moved to New York and went to the MoMA, I think, was, I so want to call it Mutt Pisser. It's the urinal that has the R. Mutt signature on it. But it's actually called Fountain. Duchamp. Look into it. Anyway, back to 1912. To do a nude like that was not ogleable, was not de rigueur. Terrible pronunciation, Janine. It was not the flavour of the day, and I guess the point is, guys, make up your own flavours. Be free. Be yourself. Be authentic. Be nude.
You are all naked.
And if you get cold, put on a jumper. Cover up. Because you don't have to be nude all of the time. You choose. Tangent. The biggest cubism lesson we got when I was in high school was either 85 or 86, where the biggest story at the time was Picasso's
This is the Weeping Woman.
because the National Gallery of Victoria in 1985 had purchased it for a ridiculous amount of money. Let me just look down and check that. 1.6 million Australian dollars. So we either were looking at that in 1985 or in 1986, just a year later, when the painting was stolen from the National Gallery of Victoria. One of the biggest art heists in Australian history. From Wikipedia, let me read this out to you. A group calling itself the Australian Cultural Terrorists, there's a name, claimed responsibility, making a number of demands, and it says in brackets here, and insults, in letters to the then Victorian Minister for the Arts, Race Matthews. The demands included increases to funding for the arts. Threats were made that the painting would be destroyed. After an anonymous tip-off to police, the painting was found undamaged in a locker at Spencer Street Railway Station, 19th of August 1986. The theft still remains unsolved. In art class, because this was in the news, either because it had just been bought for some ridiculous amount of money and people like to complain about things that affect them in no way, or the second thing, it had been stolen, so it was either 85 or 86. We, in art class, had to paint or draw our own. What the? And I still remember it because I'm pretty sure it's in a box at home in Australia because my mother kept everything. I really liked Cubism because nothing had to look like it actually did. It's all lines, boxes, shapes, shingles, basically. Anyway, this has gone on long enough. I'm so sorry. I'll see you next week and leave you with this quote attributed to Marcel Duchamp. If I call it art, it's art. Or if I hang it in a museum, it's art.
You aren't supposed